Hello and welcome back to Kit Guru. Today is part 3 of our AMD Behemoth build. In the last video I was just preparing the chassis really to get the build going. So I added some wheels to the floor, I made some custom brackets to fit these two radiators up top, just figured out the location of the two water pumps, that's where they're going to go, and I spent a lot of time wiring up all the fans, and as you can see all 30 fans are now wired up and they've been tested. I connected them to a separate system, tested them with the IQ software, everything's working, which is surprising, and I've set them all to red, so that should work nicely with the AMD theme in this build. Today I'm going to be concentrating on the smaller internal parts of the system and adding a bit of colour to the internals, just to brighten it up and just to give it that AMD theme that we obviously need because it is an AMD build. So what I'm going to be looking at is all the small bits on the motherboard, so anything that can be removed from this TRX 40 motherboard, such as the I/O shroud on the back, any of these plastic covers that cover the power connectors and ports up, the M.2 heat sinks as well, I'm going to do something with those, and then this big shroud that covers up the fan and the chipset heatsink. More or less anything that can be disassembled from this board, I'm going to disassemble it and have a look at giving it a custom paint job. Maybe even with these aluminium heat sinks, maybe look at having them anodized again in a different colour. Same with the CPU water block. You can dismantle this water block to a certain extent, so this plastic shroud that is more of an aesthetic thing, that's going to be removed. And the same goes for these Corsair Dominator RGB memory modules. These are ideal for modding because as well as this heat spreader, we've also got this, what do you call it, a RGB light bar. This part comes off separately as well. So these are great for giving like a two-tone theme, so you could have black on the heat spreader and then you could paint this light bar a different colour, or anodize it or coat it in whatever you want to do really. So they're good for modding. I'm going to have a look at changing the colour scheme of those as well. Pump res combos as well, these can be completely dismantled, so these plastic parts in black at the top and bottom, I'm going to have a look at giving those a custom colour scheme, and more or less anything else really. GPU water block as well, that's got a, I believe it's an aluminium kind of shroud around that as well, so that'll be another thing to dismantle and have a look at changing the colour of. And maybe there's a few things on this mini ITX board as well. I mean, this is probably not going to be seen as much in the system because there'll be a graphics card covering it, you know, if you're looking at it straight on. But I might remove this I/O shroud, maybe change this heatsink as well. I don't know, but we'll have a look at that when we get round to it. But that's the main thing for this this video, is just sorting all these internal parts out, all the small pieces. Also, I'm going to be making some custom cables, so we've got two systems going in this case, so both of those are going to have custom cables, sleeved in PET sleeving, 3 different colours I'm going for in the sleeving, and all the cables are going to be custom length as well, so that's going to take quite some time because it usually takes long enough just making the cables for one system, but we've got 2 in here, so it might not be double the time, but it's going to be a few days of work just making the cables up, but I'm sure they're going to look great when they're done and all the effort will be worth it. But before we get into that and start stripping down all these motherboards and memory modules, I just want to quickly remind you guys to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button if you enjoy these videos. You can now also become a member of the channel on YouTube, so hit the join button and see what your options are there. And if you want to help support Kit Guru, you can head over to our store and pick up some merch, or you could also subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, if you want to catch up on some in-depth technical reviews, head over to kitguru.net. You'll probably notice that on these motherboards there are a lot of aluminium parts, such as the M.2 heat sinks, parts of this I/O shroud on this board's aluminium, also the heatsink on the VRM on the mini ITX board, even these heat spreaders on the Corsair Dominator modules, they're all aluminium and they're all anodized. If you want to change the colour of any of these parts, ideally you want to remove the dye in the anodizing that is on the parts originally. There's various different ways you can do that. You can obviously do it with in a mechanical way, so using abrasives or something like that, but there's far easier ways and far quicker ways of doing it. So I thought it'd be a good idea to show you guys a couple of different solutions that I like to use. And one of those solutions, you might even have the product that you need for removing this anodizing. You might even have that in your cupboard at home. So there are a couple of different methods you can use for removing anodizing at home. One is to use something that's called caustic soda, or also known as sodium hydroxide or soda crystals. Sodium hydroxide or caustic soda is generally used for intense cleaning or drain unblocking. So you can find this at Amazon, eBay, maybe some supermarkets might have it as well, but you'll also find this at your plumber's merchant as well. That's one thing you can use. The other thing that I found that works probably just as well as caustic soda, may take slightly longer, is oven cleaner. The best stuff I've found is this Oven Mate. It's likely you could even have this at home, but we'll look at the caustic soda method first because this is the quickest way. So what you'll need is obviously some caustic soda, sodium hydroxide. You'll also need to take some precautions when using caustic soda because it is a chemical and it could irritate your skin and eyes. So ideally you want to be wearing some eye protection when you're using caustic soda. You want some disposable gloves as well, just to protect your hands. And if you're using caustic soda, ideally you want to be using it in a well ventilated room. And just to be extra cautious, use some kind of respirator mask as well to stop you breathing any fumes in, because when you mix this with water and you actually put your parts in, it does start to make a chemical reaction, and that can give off some, they're not really toxic fumes, but they can, you know, get to the back of your throat, and it's not nice. So you'll also need a container. I'm only going to be doing quite small parts, so this little food container will do. So you need to fill your container up with cold water. I wouldn't fill it all the way to the top because when the chemical reaction starts, it does start to bubble and froth up a bit, this. So probably do it half full or just leave a bit of space at the top for anything to spill out. So in a container of this size, I probably add 3 teaspoons of these soda crystals and give it a good stir around. You need to make sure that you use cold water as well for this, because when the reaction with the part starts working, the water actually heats up, or it makes the water heat up having this reaction as well. And always make sure that you add the soda crystals or the caustic soda to the water rather than the other way around. You always want to add your chemical to your water so that it dilutes it rather than the other way. That can cause some nasty things to happen. So give it a good stir up so that all the soda crystals have dissolved. It just takes about a minute probably for those to dissolve. I'm just going to use this piece of scrap aluminium that's been anodized black just for the purposes of this demonstration. So what you want to do is you want to drop your part into the solution, and then you just want to leave it there for a while. Probably after about a minute you'll start to see bubbles coming off the part, and that's when you know that the reaction is happening. In fact, you can already see a few bubbles coming up, but once it starts bubbling, you know that the reaction's happening. And then probably within 5-10 minutes after that, you'll be able to remove your part and you'll see how it looks. So as you can see, this has only been in there for a couple of minutes now, and the water is starting to turn black and you can see the bubbles coming off it, so you know the reaction is happening. That's usually when you know that it's nearly ready, is when the water turns the colour of the part. So once the water has changed colour, you can have a look, and there you go, you can see that it's virtually all come off already. That part was only in there for a couple of minutes and all the anodizing has come off, and also you can feel that the water is quite warm. So just move that out of the way, and then you just rinse the part off in just some plain water. Just give it a quick rinse off. You don't want to leave this too long in the caustic soda solution, because if you leave it in there too long and if your mixture is quite a strong mixture, it could start to actually attack the face of the metal as well. So that was only in there for a few minutes, and as you can see, all the anodizing has been removed. So the other method, which is probably slightly less toxic, is to use this Ovenmate oven cleaner. For that you'll still need a container to put your part in, and again I've just got a piece of old scrap aluminium with some black anodizing. Just pop that into your container, squirt a bit of your Ovenmate on it. Now this is probably less toxic than the caustic soda, but it is still quite a harsh chemical, so you still need to take precautions and wear gloves to stop it irritating your skin. But what I do is just pour some of that on to your part, then just brush it round. Once you've got it covered like that, just leave it for a little while, probably another 5-10 minutes should be enough. Maybe see a reaction happening, but it's not as extreme as the caustic soda. But just leave that in there for 5 or 10 minutes and then come back and have a look. So it's been about 5 or 6 minutes since I put this in here and put the Ovenmate on, and as you can see, it's already starting to come off. So I'm just giving this a light brush, and you can see the anodizing is starting to come off. So bring in the water again. So this is just plain tap water. I'll just give this a rub over the water, and you can see how well it is coming off. Probably not as quick as using the caustic soda, and you have to put a little bit of effort in to get it all off, but like I said, it's possible that you could even have some of this Ovenmate, or I think Oven Pride and a few others work just as well. There's potential that you could have some of this at home already. So if you had an emergency job and needed to remove some anodizing, you may have something at home that will do the job. So I've just rubbed it in a bit. I'm just going to leave it for a bit longer because there are some stubborn bits that have not quite come off. And this doesn't just apply to computer parts. You could use this method on other things such as car parts, or maybe you have some aluminium parts on your bike or something like that and you want to change the colour of them. Anything that's been anodized and is aluminium, these two methods should work perfectly well. So I've just given that a couple of minutes longer. Probably it's had about 8 or 9 minutes in total now. And as you can see, the rest of this aluminium anodizing is now coming off pretty easily. Like I said, it's taken a little bit more work than with the caustic soda, but as you'll see in a moment, the results should be just as good. So there you go. As you can see, the Ovenmate method has worked pretty well. There are a couple of little areas where there is still some traces of the dye, but if you left it a little bit longer, you would get all that off and it would look just as clean as the caustic soda one did. That's the back. We didn't really work hard at all on the back, but the majority of it has gone. But yeah, a couple of minutes extra and these bits would have gone, and you would have a clean piece of aluminium again. So those are the two methods that I like to use for removing the anodized coating on aluminium. You can either use caustic soda or Ovenmate or oven cleaner. They both produce the same end results. Just the caustic soda, it is slightly quicker, but you do have to take a little bit more precautions when you're using this. So let's get on with stripping this motherboard down, taking those memory modules apart and changing how they look. Alright, so I've been, as you can see, busy with the spray paint. I've been colour coding all these small parts that I was talking about earlier. So we've got the light bar trims for the top of the Corsair Dominator RGB memory. I've done those in a two-tone theme, so on the TRX40 motherboard where there's 8 memory slots, we're going to add red, silver to match in with the theme. I've also painted the plastic trims for both of the CPU water blocks. There's a couple of heat sinks as well, so this is the heat sink from the Mini ITX board. What I've done with that is I've just stripped off the black anodising and I've just given it a very light coating of clear coat just to give it some protection, the bare aluminium, and it shouldn't affect the thermal dissipation with that very light coat. And I also did the same with the M.2 heat sinks on the main ATX board. So they're a nice silver colour now, so there's those, and that's the other two M.2 heat sinks for that TRX40 board. There's also these pieces, so this is the rear I/O shroud, and it's also the heatsink as well for the VRM on the main ATX motherboard. I expected this to be plastic, this shroud, but it's actually aluminium. So with these aluminium parts, what I did is I just gave them a quick rub down just to scuff up the surface so that the paint adheres well. I also primed these with an etch primer as well, just for that extra bit of security, so that the paint, you know, really grabs onto those nicely. The heat sinks I've left. I didn't want to really do anything with those heat sinks, didn't want to paint them because I don't want to affect the performance of those heat sinks. And same with this other shroud that goes at the opposite side of the motherboard. This covers up the SATA ports and some of the power ports, and also you've got the power reset buttons as well. That again is aluminium. I was a little surprised at that, although this is, you know, really high-end expensive TRX40 motherboard, so you know it does make sense that these are made of aluminium rather than being cheaper plastic stuff. There's also a small plastic shroud as well. That's the rear I/O shroud for the Mini ITX board, and I've also painted the aluminium top cover for the GPU block on the 6800 XT, because that's the one that is going to be vertically mounted, yeah, right at the front side of the case. So that's the one that you'll see the most. The other water block on the 6900 XT, that's going to be horizontally mounted, so don't think I'm going to do too much with that, although I have got a laser etched logo that's going to be etched on the back plate of that. So the thing we've got to do now really is reassemble all this stuff. Remember where all the screws go. Good tip, what I usually do when I'm disassembling things like this that have a lot of screws and a lot of different screws, so like this rear I/O shroud has some just normal screws, but it also has some standoffs as well. So what I normally do when I'm disassembling them, I always like to put the screws and everything back in the place where they came from, so that you don't get confused and, you know, muddle all the screws up and have a nightmare when you're putting them back together. So that's what I'm going to do now, is reassembling all of this, and then we'll have a look afterwards and see how it looks, because once these are all reassembled, they will be ready to be fitted to the system. And then after that, I think it's custom cables, a lot of custom cables to make up with 2 systems. There's probably some other bits as well that I still need to paint or have anodized. I want to do the pump res combos as well, do something with those. So yeah, get on with reassembling all this stuff. Just before I move on to making those custom cables and finishing off those other small internal parts, I just want to show you what's planned for the new laser cut case panel. So this front panel, it's a new high flow vented front panel design. You saw this probably in the last video. This needs a little bit of prep just before it's ready for painting. So when the laser cuts these small like diamond shaped cutouts, where the laser starts and then stops, you can see there's some kind of burr or just some rough parts that need finishing. I'll have to manually finish those by hand with a small file. Just basically rub those rough bits down. It's very time consuming, but it's worth it because you get a better finish once the panel has been painted. Also, the original top panel has been cut out with that same high flow vented diamond design. Instead of the glass part that used to be in here, I've also had this Ryzen Radeon logo panel cut out, so that'll just sit on top of there. There's another little foot that needs to go on there just to support it a little bit. That'll sit on the top panel. Planning on backing that with some red acrylic, so that'll stand out nice. And then behind both these front panels, I'm planning some red illumination as well to go with the AMD theme. So hopefully I'll be able to hide some red LED strips behind here, and that should quite nicely illuminate this this vented area. And then I'm hoping as well, somehow I'm going to be able to illuminate red LEDs behind this front panel as well, so that should give it a nice glow of the front panel. I also need to reinstall this Corsair logo. This was just attached to the front of the chassis, and you could see it through the original glass panel. So I'm thinking maybe install that back there, kind of where it was originally. I'm also thinking maybe I can swap this Corsair logo, do something with this, and maybe make this into an AMD logo that will also be illuminated, because this has some RGB lighting inside. So that's the plan for the case panels. I'll probably need to get on with those before I start doing the custom cables, because I'm going to paint both these panels. I'm thinking this top panel, so this outer section, this original section, going to paint that red to match in with the rest of the system. This is going to be silver but backed with that red acrylic. And then the front panel, I'm not exactly sure on the spray job yet. I don't know whether I'm going to do it like a two-tone, so maybe start off silver at the bottom and then fade that into a red so then it fades into the top panel, or whether just to paint this silver or maybe even black and then have that red illumination behind this vented section. We'll see how that turns out. I'll probably end up painting it one way then changing my mind, so we'll see how that turns out later. So I'll get on with those, finish those, get those painted, then we need to reinstall them as well to the case, probably before I go any further with the build, because maybe some things might have to come off to reinstall these. I probably have to just disconnect the radiators or something like that. Then once they're done, fitted back to the case. In fact, I'll come back and show you these when they've been fitted back to the case, then get on with the cables and then finish off those small internal parts. So it's time for a progress update. You can see we have the new laser cut panels installed. So the front panel, I spent a lot of time just fettling the vented diamonds up. They had a lot of burr and a lot of rough edges on them. It took me almost a day just to fettle that up with the file. And you can see it's also been treated to a custom paint job. So I've gone for the kind of two-tone silver at the bottom, and then that fades into red at the top, which matches the new vented top panel as well. That didn't need as much work, it was a bit smoother. I think the grade of aluminium is a bit better on this top panel. Just gave that a quick rub down, primed it with some etch primer, and then the outer part, the original part, coated that with a red spray paint. And then you can see in the center of that panel we've got that Ryzen Radeon logo panel. That's just backed with a piece of red acrylic. The illumination on these panels, I was thinking about adding some extra illumination, some red illumination with LED strip. I don't think it's necessary, especially the front. That's really well illuminated with the fans, so there's no point in that. And then the top also has some subtle illumination from the fans, which is good because if you've got this system at the side of you or something like that, you don't want too much glare coming from that top panel. So I think that's just right. I'm really happy with how those laser cut panels have turned out in the end. Ideal for this system. They look exactly how I'd imagine them to. And on the front panel as well, if you look inside that central diamond cutout where there used to be a Corsair logo badge, we've now got a AMD logo that is lit up currently with RGB. I might just swap that for just a solid colour, red or orange, for the final build. So those outer panels now go well with the internals of the system. You saw earlier I did all the color coding of the small bits on the motherboard, the memory modules and these CPU blocks. The pump res combos, for now I'm thinking of leaving those black because they're going to have a coloured liquid inside, so that's going to add a bit of colour to those. And I thought maybe if I painted all those red with red fluid inside, might look a bit too much. So for now I'm going to leave them like that. If I think they look a bit bland later on, I'll swap those. I'll treat them to some painting as well. So I'm going to leave those for now. The last part of this video is going to be showing you the custom cables. I've gone over custom cables before. You've seen probably a lot of footage of me building custom cables from scratch. So I'm not going to go into as much detail this time showing you how they're made, but I do want to show you what I'm thinking of doing with this system, because there's not a lot of space in this power supply shroud. You can see I've installed the motherboard. That can stay in for now because I'm going to concentrate on doing the cables for this one. And I've also removed the mini ATX motherboard and the power supply shroud, so that just slips out. And you can see this Corsair AX1600i, it is quite a big boy when it comes to power supplies. And you can see I've only got probably, I don't know, about 100 mil, probably about 100 mil of space behind the power supply to route the cables. So what I want to do with these cables, sleeve with PET sleeve, and I'm going for 3 colours on this. So there's red, kind of a grey, silver, and then black. But what I want to make sure of with these cables is that they are of almost a perfect length from the power supply to where the component that the cable is going to be plugged into. I don't want too much excess cable that I've got to hide in here because there isn't a lot of space. And I might also have to run some of the cables from the SFX power supply that's in the back of the case. Maybe one might have to route through here and then into the motherboard, the ITX motherboard. So I don't want too much excess for this main power supply. So what I'm going to do is concentrating on the main system and the 24-pin connection, which is here. It's a horizontal connection rather than a vertical connection on this motherboard. Using a piece of old PET sleeving, I want to start where the 24-pin cable goes in, which is up here. So we'll start there. Then I want to thread this through the route that this is going to go. So it's going to come out straight out of the back of the case and then just route it up the back of the case where I want it to go. And I think we'll be coming out of this slot here. So just pull that through, pull the excess through, route it up where it wants to go on the back of the case. We want a bit of a loop and into this 24 pin connection. So that is the length that I want each wire to be, and that is, try and measure it on here. So that works out at 69 centimeters. So that means that each individual wire for the 24 pin cable, they want to be 69 centimeters each. I've already used the multimeter on each end of these connections, so I know the pin out of this cable, and now I know the length of the wire. So I can pretty much get on with that. And then once I've done the 24 pin, I'll install the GPU in its position, and then basically just do the same process for the 3 PCIe cables that go to this GPU. So that's 3 PCIe cables, and again we'll do the same with the EPS power connections. 2 8-pins on this board, and then we should have a full set of custom cables, the correct length, and in our red, silver and black colour scheme. So I've got the 24 pin cable made up for the main ATX system. You can see I've just put it in place temporarily. It's not fully plugged into the motherboard or the power supply, because I'll have to take it off again, because I'll probably have to take the power supply out and stuff. But I just wanted to get at least one of these cables made up, just so you can have a first look at them really. And you can see they look nice in the 3-tone colour scheme of black, red and silver, matching the rest of the system. I think they're going to look really nice once we get the other cables in for the GPUs and for the EPS connectors. Just those little finishing touches on the system really set it off. So just wanted to get that done so you could have a first look at it. I've not got time in this video to do the rest, but I will have those done between now and the next video, which leads me on quite nicely to the next video, which will be the final video in this series, and we'll not have much left to do because the system's really starting to take shape now. In the next video it'll basically be finishing off installing the rest of the components. I'll have those other cables ready, and then getting onto the cooling with the custom loop, and then hopefully we'll have a system that boots and runs. In that next part as well, I'm also going to have a look at some of the AMD software. I don't want to mess around too much with overclocking this system, because it is going to be going as a competition to a winner in the competition. So I don't want to leave them with any potential instabilities or anything like that. So what we're going to do is look at the AMD software, see how AMD software can help boost performance in gaming and with CPU performance. So we'll take a look at that as well in the next video, which will be the last in the series. So if you've been enjoying this AMD Behemoth series, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us a like as well, and if you want to help support Kit Guru, go to our store, pick up some Kit Guru merch, or maybe you could subscribe to our Patreon. If you want to catch up on some in-depth technical reviews, head over to the website, and you can keep in touch with us through social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and through our Discord channel. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.